Today's video will be on the movie, The Kid Who Would Be King. Young Alex rushes to school after his mom helps him put the last touches on his school project. On the bus ride to school, the radio news reports about the global instability as there is rise in corruption and social division at an alarming rate. Alex gets a series of messages from his friend Betters, who alerts him that their bullies are following him, so he needs help. After alighting from the bus, he quickly runs to school calling for his friend and eventually finds him being held upside down by the school bullies Lance and Kay. They want payment in return for allowing them to survive at school. He orders them to let him go, which they do, but they intentionally make sure he falls to the ground. Alex tries to confront them, but he is pushed into a puddle by Lance, causing his project work to get wet as it falls out of his bag. He warns him to stop trying to be a hero and proclaims himself king of the school before walking off. Alex has had enough, so he tackles him from behind and proceeds to pathetically punch him as the other kids gather to watch. A teacher quickly breaks up the fight and sends him to Mrs. Lee's office. She questions him about the incident, but Alex is no snitch, so he says nothing even when threatened with detention. After that tough day at school, the two friends walk home while Betters thanks him for the save and swears loyalty. He even suggests that they should move together so that they don't get picked on, but Alex reminds him that they already do that and the bullies still get them, so they should just surrender to their fate. Betters tries to cheer him up with a magic trick, but he makes a mistake while performing it, so it fails. When Alex gets home, his mom notices his wounds and asks about his fight, but he explains what really happened, so his mom questions why he didn't inform the teacher. The kid alerts her that she wouldn't understand, but his estranged father would if he was around. She tells him that he would have told him to tell the truth before putting him to bed. As his mother closes his room blinds, Morgana's evil voice comments from the underworld about how weak and pathetic humanity is at the moment. While they grow weaker, she gets stronger. She opens her eyes for the first time in a millennium. The following day, Alex stays back after school to complete his detention with the bullies. They still threaten to get him non-verbally. The offenders are all released when their time is up, but the two bullies make good on their promise and begin to chase the poor boy through a park. He manages to give them the slip when he darts into a building site, but they ultimately find him after doubling back. The bullies march towards him, which causes Alex to fall from the second floor of the half-demolished building, but he lands on a pile of sand. They don't see him moving, so they decide to run away from the scene, fearing the worst. Shortly after, Alex regains consciousness and begins to explore the lower part of the site when he comes across a sword in the stone. He calls out to see if anyone is around, and after a few tries he pulls the sword out of the stone. Simultaneously, the police sirens start to sound nearby, which startles the kid, so he quickly puts the sword in his bag before calling Betters to meet him at his house. Meanwhile, in the underworld, Morgana senses that the sword has been pulled from the stone. She starts to use the plant roots to find the one who took it, which would make them the new king. Her aim is to retrieve the sword and kill said king. The roots begin to further spread near Alex's window as he draws the blinds to prevent any prying eyes from seeing what he is doing. He shows his friend the sword after explaining what happened. Alex believes it's a prank for a YouTube channel or something. They examine the blade and translate the inscription on the guard as the sword of Athur, the son of Tintagel. He immediately goes to the attic to retrieve a book about the legend of King Arthur given to him when he was younger by his dad. He used to read it a lot. When they review the book, they realize that Tintagel is the place in modern-day Cornwall. Legends say that it's where Arthur was born. Alex remembers going there when he was around 5, as that was where his dad lived. It also happens to be the last time he saw him, and where he was given the book signed by his father, who called him a king. Betters suggests that the blade might be the actual sword in the stone. They laugh it off and joke around as Alex knights his friend with Excalibur. The friends are interrupted when his mom alerts him to go to bed. Betters quickly leaves the room from the window, hoping it's the actual sword. Alex hides it in his wardrobe before going to bed. In the early hours of the morning, Merlin appears from Stonehenge naked and makes his way to a local shop where he requests for some strange ingredients. The mage instead charms him into giving him some clothes before he sets off near the motorway where police stop him. He charms them too into sending him to his destination. They arrive at Alex's school, where he releases the officers before turning into an owl. He later infiltrates Alex's class pretending to be a new student. His classmates find him odd from his speech, but Betters finds him interesting. Alex warns his friends to stay away from the new guy, as there is finally someone at the school weirder than them. During their lessons they notice Merlin staring at them, which makes them a little uncomfortable. At science class, the mage starts to panic when he finds out that the solar eclipse is occurring in 4 days' time. Later on at lunch he marches loudly, alerting Alex that since he drew Excalibur, Morgana will return during the eclipse when the two realms bridge, so he must gather his army to face her. Alex excuses himself, wanting nothing to do with the new kid, but the mage continues by warning the students of the upcoming danger and even tries to recruit them as soldiers into Alex's army, but he gets rubbish thrown at him instead. On the way home from school, Betters points out that what the new kid said might be true, because no one should know about the sword part from the two of them. Alex is a little spooked out, so he decides to return the sword. That night the Excalibur blinks, but he wakes up to a sound outside. When he checks, a fire knight emerges from the ground. He jolts back in fear, but when he looks again the knight is gone. He checks down the stairs to find it coming up, so the boy rushes to his mom's room only to find that she has disappeared. He returns to his room and grabs the sword ready to defend himself, but he's easily overwhelmed. Merlin destroys it before it can land the killing blow. The mage explains that appearing in the human world after dark is lethal for him, so he gives him a flyer to a chicken shop for them to meet when morning comes. He checks over his book to get more information on what's going on. Meanwhile in the underworld, Morgana is briefed of their target after first contact. She starts to awake the rest of her fire knights in preparation for their next attack. The following morning his mom walks in to find him holding the sword. He tries to explain that it's Excalibur at breakfast, but she doesn't believe him. She lets him know that they are taking it back to the building site, but he objects to doing so. When he starts referencing the book, his mother feels like she understands that all this might be a coping mechanism regarding his dad's absence. So she explains that his dad left because he had his battles and demons to fight. Alex interprets it as what he's going through now. As she continues with her back turned, he tries to sneak off with the sword and points it at her before leaving with it. The two friends skip school for the first time to meet Merlin, who works and resides at the chicken shop. The mage reveals that chicken, berry soda and ice cream from the food shop contains the ingredients needed to restore his strength. The mage explains that the reason he appears young is because he gets younger as he ages. He warns Alex that from now on, nighttime will be dangerous for him too. When the fire knights emerge, time stops, and any human soul around disappears apart from the one who drew the sword and people he has knighted. The spell is only broken at sunrise, or when all the summoned demons have been defeated. He gives more exposition of their enemy, stating that Morgana is King Arthur's half-sister and the embodiment of evil. She feels that she's the true ruler, so she wants to attain the sword to legitimize her claim. The witch has been woken because of the state of humanity. Alex has come to return the sword, but before he leaves, Merlin transforms into his older self and shows them the dark future if nothing is done. They decide to take on the quest after seeing the horror. They make their way back to the construction site where the engraving confirms that Alex is the king. The duo hangs around there till late trying to figure out what this all means. Alex concludes that his dad must have known that they are descendants of King Arthur, which is why he left the message. In order to find their way to the underworld, they must venture to Cornwall to him for help. The friends are confronted by their bullies as they try to leave. Lance demands the sword, but Alex puts it back in the stone and challenges them to remove it, but they are unable to. He strikes a deal that if he removes it then they must allow him to knight them. Lance takes the sword, but soon after, the fire knights emerge, and after a brief chase sequence, they manage to defeat them using a car that Kay drives. They go back to Lance's place where Alex explains the situation to his bullies. He leaves a message for his mother alerting her his departure before setting off on the journey to Cornwall with his knights. On the way there, they are trained on swordsmanship and the chivalric code by Merlin, who duplicates weapons for them. The mage also uses some trees as their sparring partners. Morgana takes control of the trees and uses them to attack the knights. Lance utilizes his opportunity to take Excalibur for himself, but they are ultimately saved by Merlin. The mage used too much power, so he has to retreat in order to recover, leaving the knights without his aid when darkness comes. The group find themselves in a swamp where Alex and Lance have a fight because of the bullies' selfishness for taking the sword and leaving them for dead. As they clash, Excalibur breaks because he is not the true wielder. Lance throws it into the water before leaving with Kay. Alex calls to the Lady of the Lake, who restores the sword. Lance quickly falls back in line now that he understands what's at stake. The group makes it out the swamp with better cohesion and are given a ride by a local horse riding group. Darkness comes, and the humans disappear, leaving the knights alone. Soon the demons come out again, leading to a horse chase. Alex uses a nearby cliff to lure their pursuers over to their demise. After spending a night outdoors, Alex leaves Excalibur nearby before going in to meet his dad. He's greeted by his auntie, who explains that his dad was an alcoholic who abused the people around him. It was his mother who wrote the message on the book and not his dad. A deflated Alex sits alone at the cliffside. Betters cheers him up by doing the duplication trick. Lance and Kay also come over to give their support. Merlin makes a return and alerts him that the Excalibur chooses based on character, not lineage. With his confidence restored, he figures out the location of the underworld. Betters uses his duplication magic to make them win a coin game in an arcade. They use said funds to buy some armor and set off to Stonehenge to the Glastonbury tour, as that is where Arthur fought Morgana and sealed her away. They make their way into the underworld, where he faces the king's half-sister alone because his knights get captured. After some evading, Alex pretends to give her the sword and impales her at the last moment before escaping with his knights as the underworld falls on Morgana. With the threat defeated, Alex returns the sword back to the Lady of the Lake. They go home assuming the job is done. Alex wakes up the next morning with the roots covering his window. Merlin comes to warn him that Morgana is still alive. The young lad figures that he didn't live one of the chivalric codes by honoring those he loved, That is why he couldn't defeat this great evil. He quickly makes amends with his mother and shows her that he is not lying about his adventure. He summons the sword from their bathtub to his mother's surprise. Alex then regroups with his knights at the round dinner table to formulate a plan for the last stand. They decide on the school and march there with their swords and armor. Merlin charms Miss Lee into gathering the students for them to persuade them to join the fight. The kids are reluctant at first, but when the principal alerts them that the fight will replace the day's lessons, the kids are all up for it. Merlin and betters use the duplication spell to make more armor and weapons for everyone as they prepare for the battle. The mage also charms all the teachers, which allows them to get the job done as Alex knights everyone. With the plan set, they wait for the eclipse as hordes of fire knights merge and attack the school. The students put up a good fight with their strategy, but the fire knight numbers start to overwhelm them, so they retreat to the rooftop. Morgana makes her appearance, and the students are ready for her as they restrict her movement with ropes. Merlin opens a portal while Alex makes a leap on Morgana's back and finishes her with a final blow. The shock waves from the portal closing destroys her minions. The students hold Alex up as they celebrate their victory. In the aftermath, the group makes their way to a local park where Merlin commends them on a battle well fought before saying goodbye to them. Alex throws Excalibur back into the water where the Lady of the Lake catches it before retreating back with it in hand.